Joined by Gus Martin, who is in Los Angeles. He's a professor of terrorism and extremism at California State University in Dominguez Hills. And thank you for being with us again today.
My pleasure.
Tell us, the fate of the Jordanian pilot right now unknown, but King Abdullah got into this war for a reason, which is to eliminate the Islamic State. The king says moderate Muslims now need to combat a group whose ideology and brutality have insulted the spirit of Islam. Yet many still fear the Jordanians will blame the country's regime, not ISIL if he's dead. So what's going to happen?
Well, that remains to be seen. One problem that we see is that ISIL and other groups, other similar groups, actually are very adept at manipulating the media and social networking media. And when they engage in this sort of propaganda with a hostage, their intent is to affect public opinion within the host country from where the hostage is. And they are having some effect in Jordan. We see the effect that they had in Japan and elsewhere. And yes, it's a real possibility that the Jordanian population, depending on what happens, how this plays out, may actually begin to turn against the king's policy.
Is it ISIL's ideology and brutality that forced King Abdullah into this?
It is indeed. ISIL views itself as a pure interpretation of Islam, and they're establishing God's kingdom on earth, the caliphate, if you will. And that is in opposition to kingdoms such as Jordan and other secular rulers, if you will, in the Middle East. They view themselves as being in opposition to these states, and they're establishing a purely Islamic state, and that actually does account somewhat for their popularity. There's a true idealism among them, and they are receiving more and more volunteers because of this.
Do you see Jordan actually executing all the ISIL prisoners, including Sajida al-Rishawi, if the pilot is in fact dead?
Well, remember that al-Rishawi is under a death sentence now. And certainly if the pilot, if there is no proof of life and the pilot is indeed verifiably dead, then they may actually execute her because she's already under a death sentence. With the other prisoners, perhaps they'll keep them as further leverage if ISIL continues to attack Jordanian interests.
Is ISIL dividing Jordan right now, the population, or do you think in the end people will ultimately back this regime?
Oh, I think that ISIL is certainly having a temporary effect on public opinion. I don't see any long-term split that's actually generated from ISIL's actions within Jordan. But again, terrorism is a war in our heads, it's a war in the media, and they do have short-term temporary effects, and we can see that slowly playing out in Jordan.
Can you tell us just a little bit more about King Abdullah's view of terrorism and these extremists compared to his father, King Hussein, who in fact did not get involved in the war against Saddam Hussein?
Yeah, one thing about this is that rulers like Saddam Hussein were not Islamists. They were, from the perspective of the Middle East, they were the strong men, and there's a long tradition of the strong man ruling countries in the Middle East. ISIL is different. They are a true insurgency that uses terrorism to great effect, and they've been effective lately. They are a threat to the strong men of the Middle East, if you will. So there should be no surprise that the current king is in opposition to groups like ISIL, who are actually there to create their own version of an Islamic state.
Gus Martin, thank you so much, joining us live from Los Angeles. We appreciate it.